topic today is about why do certain things happen to people? And, namely, there's a specific question we also want to address is why do bad things happen to good people? Now, what you'll see on the right side is that we have labeled different types of events. We categorize them into positive, neutral, and negative events. Now, the secret is not right here. The secret is actually right over here on how this entire chart flows. So let's think, and let's say an event happens, whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. It passes through the five senses, right? It comes through, and then there's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. We get different kind of sensory input, right? These are smell and taste. Now then, once it passes through the five senses, it gets filtered. Because realize this, not everything that passes through our senses actually goes into our consciousness. Yeah, let's just put it that way. Let's keep it relatively simple because we spend a lot more time in our practitioner training getting into the details and more advanced topics. But let's keep it more specific in a sense that we want to address why do certain things happen to certain people? And is it necessarily true that bad things happen to good people or good things happen to bad people or good things happen to good people? Or how does it work? You'll see. We have the set of filters because we receive, some say up to 20 million bits of information per second, but we filter them down to about 126 bit. 126 out of 20 million bits of information. Now, what's interesting is these are the filters right here, and their job is to delete, distort, generalize. Yeah. Have you ever looked for keys in front of you? They're right in front of you, and yet you don't see them. And you ask your friends or your family, and they're, oh yeah, it's right there. It's right in front of you. What's going on is deletion. Yeah. Have you ever heard stories where at a crime scene, different witnesses tell different stories? Distortion. Yeah. We all distort things and distort memories, distort events. Yeah. One event may mean a certain thing to you, and it may mean something else completely to someone else. Now, generalize is also something, right? If you see someone in a really nice Tom Ford suit, you may say that person's got to be, blah, 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 whatever you think it is. Or you see someone who is sleeping under the bridge, yeah, in a cold winter night, you may assume and generalize they are, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And if you go and notice that if you speak in a certain way, like for example, in speech patterns, like for example, if you were to speak with a upward tonality, people will actually unconsciously generalize you to be less confident. But if you speak with a downward tonality, what you'll find is people find you to be more authoritative, yeah, as if you have more skills or you are more respected naturally. And because that's a natural pattern that the unconscious produces. Yeah. Less self-questioning, more self-confidence. That's generalized. And you can actually change your tone in how you ask a question or how you say certain things and take the tone downward at the end. What happens is people will find you to be more, respectable or more powerful, more confident. That being said, language is one of them. Value, what's important to us. Yeah. If something's not important to you, it may get deleted. It may get distorted or generalized. Same with our beliefs. If we have certain beliefs, yeah, if you believe that you're always taken care of and that the universe has your back, guess what? You're going to undelete. There's another thing, right? You're going to undelete the wonderful things that could happen and delete the things that may not be so good for you. Now imagine if you could custom design your beliefs, right? And then right here, decisions that you make. Every belief, every behavior began somewhere with a decision. And it may be completely unconscious. And if you know how to find those decisions, what happens is you will find yourself being able to completely architect your life the way you want. Because you can go back and insert decisions as well, actually. And you'll notice a ripple effect. You could even start now. Create new decisions daily. Reinforce it by taking action. Yeah. So if you say, hey, I'm going to only fly first class. I'm just giving you an example that one of our clients told us. Yeah. And they made that decision, and guess what? They were tested a few times, and then they kept flying first class. And every time they did, they began to find themselves having these, quote, coincidences, yeah, or just wonderful accidents that are good things, yeah, money coming into their life, or some great opportunities. It's just so happened at around the time that they experienced first class. Now, that's actually a decision you can also make. Is what happens when you do what you decide to do. Think about it. You can make a decision, and you can actually make a, well, it's a cause and effect, right? It's an if-then statement, yeah. So if this, then this. So guys, let's talk about this for a moment. If you have a decision that you're going to, let's say, fly first class, and that's your decision, it's A. Then if you fulfill that, if you fulfill the if, then B is going to happen. Now, you can artificially go and do A and then artificially go and do B, right? You could even time a close of a sale or the collecting of, money from a deal to be right after you do something you want yourself to do. right? Let's say I'm going to pick something that may seem insignificant to you, but maybe seem very important to you, right? Brush your teeth at 9 p.m. at night. Well, let's say if you were to plan your closing at 9 o'clock at night, maybe you have a digital business and you collect, or maybe your business is international and at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. you collect money, or 9:01, right? You go and brush your teeth right before that. I know it may sound silly, but bear with me. Every time you do that and you collect, your unconscious mind begin to associate the two. Just watch what happens when you brush your teeth without thinking about the money coming through next time. You may be in a new city. Who knows? You may be traveling and you're in Paris at a hotel and it's 9 p.m. and you brush your teeth and all of a sudden you see on your phone you got paid. You're like, whoa, this is not even in the same time zone. And that was unexpected. The power of if-then statement. If you can build a bunch of decisions of if this happens, then this happens, and you are artificially, you can do that, right? You plan the event one after the other. And then you do that, enough that it reinforces that it's true. Then you go and do A, action A, B will happen. Test it. Find out for yourself. Yeah. And then there's meta program. That's actually in our master program. We teach that. It's some very unconscious things that we do. Memories, obviously, has a lot to do with what we believe reality to be. Yeah. If you grew up thinking the world is a certain way because you've been taught that way, that's what you've seen, you will begin to delete, distort, generalize. You will have already begun a long time ago to delete, distort, generalize the world to be a certain way. Until you change those, not necessarily, we're not necessarily changing the content. We're talking about changing the context of the memory, the emotions, the decisions attached, right? These are all connected, by the way. The language you use to describe your memory, the things that are important according to your old decisions you've made and your beliefs, and what where you are, time, matter, space, and energy-wise, all those things has an impact on your filter. Your filter is like your map that you use to navigate the world. If it does not show up on your map, you may not think it exists in reality. But I'll tell you this right now, there's a lot more abundance in the reality that we live in than you probably realize. Therefore, your map may not be sufficiently describing what's actually in the reality we live in. So, next, what's happening here is a set of representations of what actually comes through as data. So the data passes through the filters, and then it goes to internal representation of the external event. So the picture, sounds, feeling, smell, and taste are what actually represents what's going on outside after things have been filtered and, after things have passed through your five senses and been filtered. Now, it's making a lot of sense, I hope. It's going to make a lot more sense as we keep going. This is essentially a thought, guys. And a thought, if you were to ask yourself what's a thought, and you chunk down, you get more specific, you realize that's what typically a thought is. And of course, there's the logical thought somewhere, right? The labels that you use to describe these things and the, the numbers and things. Anyway, then you notice your emotional state actually has a relationship with your thoughts. You may think that you can't control your emotions. You can. Indirectly, especially when you utilize what comes through your mind. What's your thought, yeah? Now, this representation of the external event has a huge impact on how you feel inside. Yes, you can feel unresourceful, you can feel resourceful. But I will tell you right now, there are no unresourceful people, only unresourceful states. And that state can impact your physiology and vice versa. How you take care of your body, your diet, your exercise, your posture, your self-care, your everything, your hydration, your environment, all these things has to do with your state. And so when you change your physiology and your state, you'll find that your thoughts also change. They are all connected, these three. Now, one thing that you got to pay attention to is that your emotional state has everything to do with your behaviors. If you were to want to change your behaviors or program your behaviors, and by programming, of course, we mean precisely influence, right? What you'll find is these micro, macro behaviors and how you used to react or how you react to things or how you naturally go and do, they all change based on your state. Now, of course, not just one moment, but cumulatively, yeah? It's stacked upon one another. So over time, habitually, how you feel programs what your behavior is. Now, that feeling isn't just as simple as what you think a feeling may be. The feeling, within the feeling, it has data that is actually really sophisticated and complex. And that data communicates what kind of results you want to your body and your mind and your external world. Essentially, the result in our life is literally created by our behavior, right? Makes sense. But it actually starts from our state, which is influenced by our internal representation, our thoughts, yeah, and our physiology. And those things are automatically influenced by our filters. And if you are noticing this now, you'll notice one of the most automated ways to change is to change your filters. If you change your filters, and I'll give you an example. Instead of thinking, oh, if I work hard, I'll make a lot of money, you change your filter to, I'm going to make a lot of money no matter how hard or not hard I work, because I naturally attract wonderful and fantastically awesome win-win opportunities into my life. And it's easy for me to experience that win-win, that opportunity that's win-win because people like me or because this or that. You can program all these things. Just know that your filter is what makes you, allows you to see or hear or feel the reality that you live in. So if you want to change your reality, change your filters. Guys, this is a very important lesson. I want you to really remember this. If you need to watch this again, go for it. not going to dive into too much more detail. This is a crazy cool formula. We don't explain every bit of it because there's a lot of time that we spent diving into this in the practitioner course. But I will point out, yeah, this is mindset, which is what you see up here. This whole thing is mindset. And then your goals, yeah, the size of your goals has everything to do with how quickly your mindset will grow, obviously. And then there's the action. How much action? How quickly do you take your massive actions? And how massive is your action? And I don't just mean physical action. Yeah. Notice action has to do with not just the physical plane, but mental, emotional, and even spiritual plane. And then this T is time, yeah, to the exponent of time and training. In fact, obviously your time is going to be more efficient when you take more trainings like this one or any more advanced trainings. What you'll find is we intentionally within our training, we help you leverage this formula. And D signifies your dream. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to write perfectly with this mouse. It looks funny, yep. Anyway, but D stands for dream or your dreams. And C stands for your current situation right here. So current situation plus your mindset up here and what you're learning in this training and or any further training, you'll find that as you do that, your goals obviously would, you'll achieve more goals because they'll happen easier as you evolve and tap into more of who you are. I'll tell you right now, it's really about unlocking you, right? And this is a programmed, set of steps. So when you change certain key components like filters, which is what our training is built for, is literally to help someone change their filters. Because this map, when you begin to place certain abundant, wonderful elements into your map, you'll find that you find them in your reality. So when you learn how to change your map, you'll change your reality. So, and then, obviously set big goals. Now, whatever that big goal is, whatever big means to you, yeah, and take action, over time. And then as you continue to do this training and or beyond, you'll find that you could live the life of your dreams. So really, to get back to the first question, bad things don't happen to good people. Things or event happens, not necessarily to people, but there is a number of unconscious things that happen that actually leads to an event, and a series or a sequence of events will occur because of all these things that are happening inside. So really, I'm just going to clear this so I can draw this really easily. Really, everything you see here, this teeny little bit is the external reality. Yeah. Everything else is the internal reality. And if you learn how to change your internal reality, you'll notice the external reality, which sometimes we call the external mirror, will begin to reflect what's going on inside. So yeah, good people may not have good beliefs about reality. They may speak poorly of themselves. They may have memories of failure that are traumatic. They may have made decisions that they don't deserve a wonderful life. And perhaps certain things are not valuable or important to them. And that time, matter, space, and energy, they have not mastered the exchange of energy. There's a number of things that could happen. And then they may not be taking good care of their diet or exercise. All these things contribute to them. Because let me ask you this. How easy is it for a good person to feel unresourceful, to feel, angry, sad, or feel fearful, right? All of those unresourceful emotions, we are all capable of feeling them. It's not like you're a good person and you don't feel them, right? But let me tell you, I'll end with this. The number one best predictor of our behavior directly is our state. So if a wonderful person feels unresourceful, have you ever made a really good decision when you felt like crap? It's not easy. And most of the time you actually made not necessarily the best decisions, right? In those moments. And that is a behavior. And so you separate behavior from people, right? And who they really are. So we could be an amazing, magnificent being, infinite being, who happen to be in a negative state because of filters, right? That we have accepted as our program, our map. That generates a certain set of behaviors, and the result shows up in their life. And then from the outside, it seems like bad things happen to good people, but they were having unresourceful states inside. And now you may argue and say, hey, maybe they weren't, because how do you know, right? Maybe they were in a resourceful state. Well, there's something else that influences your state, your physiology, your internal representation. And there are certain things physiologically and or in your thought pattern that are epigenetically transferred, some would say, yeah? So there are certain things that you got to do not only to clear your own mind and evolve yourself, but you got to help your family. You've got to help the people that are closest to you, because they being in your environment, and that perhaps they are connected to you in your family, in your, line of, bloodline, you'll find that it has epigenetic influences perhaps, yeah? Now, I'm not going to go too deep into it. All I'm saying is if you spend enough time with someone, yeah, people say you are the average of the 5 you spend the most time with. If you happen to be in a certain environment long enough, it will influence your state, your behavior, and your result. And this loop is a feedback loop. So I'll say this. So what does that mean when a negative event happens to someone? What kind of feedback is that? What can they learn from it? What about a neutral event or a positive event? So anyway, enjoy this. And in the coming lessons, we're going to show you how to leverage your emotional state to create the behaviors that you want automatically so that you can get the results and the event that you want.